Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Blackout Magazine. Today, I am sitting with Patrick Hunter and Jeremy. I don't know your last name.
It's Jeremy Dias.
Dice, from Day of Pink in the Two Spirit flag, all the way from Canada. So, first and foremost, I would like you both to introduce yourselves, give us your pronouns, and tell us a little bit about yourselves. You can start with you, Jeremy.
So my name is Jeremy. I'm a volunteer with the Day of Pink. I use he, him pronouns. And yeah, I've been with the organization for a couple of years now, and it's really exciting because this year we're celebrating the anniversary of the 31st anniversary of the word Two Spirit. And it's a really special word that was created here in Treaty One in Winnipeg, and is meant to sort of tell the stories of First Nations, Métis, Inuit folks who identify as part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. So really excited to be part of today's chat.
Awesome. And Patrick?
Hi there, I'm Patrick Hunter. I'm an artist and graphic designer from a little place in northwestern Ontario, Canada called Red Lake. I use he, him pronouns as well. And yeah, happy to be here to chat with you guys about the design.
Awesome. So our editor, Tamara Lee, saw the Two Spirit flag in an advertisement for Day of Pink and fell in love with it and showed it to me, and I was blown away. And so I wanted to talk more about what Two Spirit is and what the inspiration for the flag was. So who's best to answer that question? Do you want to tag team?
I think that's probably the best way because I was I wasn't really aware that it was like to me, when I would see the Two Spirit flag before I kind of gave it the refresh, it sort of seemed like there was like multiple versions of the same one, like, and not to knock the design at all, but I was like, that could be better, it could be a little bit more updated. I mean, when it was made, computers, I think, were just kind of coming out as something to use
Right.
creatively as well. So it looked a little clip arty, in the before times. And then I was already working on a mural for the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, and I'd seen the Two Spirit flag, and I was like, let me just kind of do that, like give it a little refresh for the mural. And then when Jeremy emailed and asked if I would be interested in kind of doing the redesign, I was like, I've already got it. Like I've done it before. So it really it worked out I mean, in a very serendipitous way as well, because I was like, oh, that would be cool if the flag was kind of refreshed a little bit. And then lo and behold, like a year later, it was.
Now, Jeremy, talk to us about the concept of Two Spirit and what it means to the community.
Yeah, so it's a bit tricky for me to talk about the word Two Spirit because I'm not part of the Two Spirit community. The Day of Pink is a volunteer-run organization that runs, free workshops in Canada and free day-long events in Canada. And every year, the Day of Pink is meant to be a day of action around 2S LGBTQIA plus communities. It's really cool, actually, because the day is not just one day. It's sort of we have activities throughout the year. But what I also love about the Day of Pink is that we don't just promote our day of action. We sort of identify anniversaries or historical moments that we want to celebrate and honor. And so for this year's anniversary, we selected the word Two Spirit, which is celebrating a 35th anniversary. And there's a number of stories and legends about where the word comes from. Most folks agree that it originated out of Treaty One in Winnipeg, just north of North Dakota. And it happened at the second international 2S LGBTQIA plus Indigenous gathering. Many credit the word creation to Myra Laramie. And it's really interesting because, once the word was identified, it sort of echoed in community in a way that I thought was really powerful because Two-Spirit folks have been here pre-colonization, and in indigenous communities prior to colonization, many communities revered and celebrated them. And so for this year's anniversary, the theme was reemergence, and the word was picked by John Celeboy, the founder of Wabanaki Two-Spirit Alliance. And the reason why he picked that word was because it was about two-spirit folks reclaiming and reemerging in space. And this year is also really special because it's also the 10th anniversary of our Truth and Reconciliation Commission that studied the violence and discrimination specifically around residential schools and day schools in Canada that Indigenous communities were forced into, and the impact of that legacy of trauma. And I think, seeing the intersections of that anniversary as well as the fifth anniversary of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's and Girls Report, and then the Two Spirit anniversary was really important because it begged us as a community to ask the question, what have we done? What are we doing for reconciliation and for community? And for us as volunteers at the Day of Pink, you know, it was important that we centered our work around uplifting stories and community activists and community leaders. And it was a magical year. We did 40 events, and the flag was launched, and we shared stories, and a lot of people learned and grew and did fantastic things. So we're really happy.
Wow, 40 events through, and that's throughout the year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is
A
phenomenal.
lot.
Wow. So
Yeah.
when you speak to the stories and the events that you do, what it's centered in April, correct?
Yeah, well, and yeah, so the Day of Pink happened this year on April 9th, but we have events throughout the year. We run over 500 free workshops. We run, as I said, 40 day-long events. And yeah, so it was a lot. It was a busy year, and it was really great because people got to share stories and learn, I think, in a different way. I also think because our anchor speakers were all from First Nations, Métis, or Inuit communities, um, the learning approach was different. We did art activities, we did, round dances, we used music, we used drumming, and storytelling to sort of bring this year's anniversaries to life, and then also look at the intersections of those anniversaries too. One of our speakers, Todd Ross, talked about his experience as someone who was part of the Canadian military and was purged for being LGBTQ, and then experienced discrimination and violence. So it was really interesting to see someone who's Métis, who would have experienced racism when back then go through this really horrible homophobic experience, and then find space and recognition through the processes and the efforts of reconciliation by both government and community. So yeah, it's really cool. And I encourage anyone watching right now to go to the Day Pink website. We have some really fantastic videos, including Mr. Hunter launching the Two Spirit Pride flag, and it's a great way of learning about these stories straight from the sources. So yeah.
Fantastic. Now, Patrick, talk to us about, you said you gave a little bit about the inspiration for the flag, but talk to us a little bit about your process and what it meant to you to redesign this flag.
Sure. And just for context as well, like the term two spirit, it kind of means that there's like two spirits that dwell within a single body. And I think that was like a way that for Indigenous people, that concept kind of made sense more so than kind of, I mean, it's just a quicker way, in my eyes, in my perspective, it's a quicker way to get through the 2S LGBTQ2I. So it kind of encompasses everybody on that spectrum from our point of view, and it's just quicker to kind of say two spirit rather than kind of making our way through. And sometimes you don't always remember the full acronym.
All of the letters.
You know, all the letters, but it's I think again a quicker way to kind of get through that. But yeah, there's two spirits that dwell within each of us, and one of those spirits might be a little bit more dominant than the other one. And that kind of like translates to all beautiful queer people. Um, and yeah, the design process, like I said, it was kind of already, it was mostly there. It just needed like a little zhuzh, I would say. And I wanted to bring it up to kind of like this is sort of the design for folks that maybe don't see it around a lot. Like obviously we just launched it, but um I wanted it to kind of like be brought up to the to date times, but then also a throwback to beading and whatnot, which is kind of like what I wanted the dots to kind of look like. Um and in indigenous art, like the art type of art style that I paint in and design in is called woodland artwork, and it's you know kind of centered around like Jeremy and I are talking about very Canadian things. Like when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women, we're talking about truth and reconciliation. Like the audience might not quite know what those things are because I'm not sure if they're really happening in the United States as to the degree that they're being recognized and things are being done about them here.
They are
Anyway, so
happening, but they may not be being recognized.
right. Yeah, yeah, of course. Anyway, so um with the Day of Pink, like we really wanted to or they really wanted to kind of talk about it and bring it up into the mainstream culture a little bit more. And they reached out to me and I, at first was a little bit weary about doing the design only because like why me, like there's a lot of really cool indigenous artists out there that are doing really great work as well, and I had a little moment of like, well, why not me, like I also do really cool stuff. So um in working with the Olympics, doing the jerseys for the Olympic curling teams, working with the Chicago Blackhawks, doing goalie masks and their land acknowledgement that plays throughout their arena as well. So, a couple of the highlights, and this was definitely one of the ones that was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and luckily, and it was well received, and people seem to really like it. And I love the aspect of it being like open source as well, so folks can download the image and put it onto their whatever they want to put it onto. The flag itself, it's quite affordable, I would say, and also, folks can kind of use design in whichever way they want to represent it. So it just seemed like the perfect way to give back to a community that's given me a lot over the years.
Oh, that's beautiful. That,
Patrick, you actually said something that I thought was really beautiful. You talked about how each one of us has an opportunity to contribute to something, like sort of like raindrops in a river. And I think, sometimes, the raindrop hits and it ripples, but sometimes it creates a wave. And I think this flag is one of those things that sort of waves throughout the community because the one thing we hear from, First Nations and Two-Spirit folks, but especially youth, is that when they look at it, they already know what it is. And I think that's the coolest part about the design is that you've done such a good job of echoing the original Pride flag creator Gilbert Baker's design. And he was actually a really like not to get too sentimental, but he was a really good friend of mine. And we got to travel across Canada together, and he really wanted to speak in schools before he passed, and it was something we were able to do together. And he talked about the simplicity of the flag, but also how like each one of us has ownership of the flag and each one of us has a job in
Yeah.
caretaking for the flag. I asked him one time, I'm like, dude, there's like 80 new pride flag designs. Like, what do you think about this? And he was like, I want another 80 more, because
Yeah.
each person in our community is different and special and magical. And a lot of people think, when Monica Helms created the trans flag or when Michael Page created the bi flag, that they created it in spite of the
Right.
rainbow pride flag, but it's actually the opposite. Gilbert was instrumental in supporting Michael, and the progress flag and the trans flag. Like he was so supportive of those processes. And it was really, when you created what you created, I think the average person, even if they're not um necessarily comprehending the complexities of two-spirit communities, understands the intention of the flag. And I think there's something really amazing about that. So yeah, it's just a little bit of like nerdy, like your contribution is gonna to echo through time and space. Like it's kind of cool, you know?
Thank
Absolutely. That is a phenomenal way to present that. I love that. Let me ask you, um, if you had a motto that you live by, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Patrick.
Oh gosh, I think it's like we're here for like only a certain amount of time, and hopefully the verse that you're contributing to the cosmic poem is going to be something that resonates with others. But then at the end of the day, or at the end of your life, you hope that it was good, and you stand behind those verses that you're kind of contributing. So as an artist and a graphic designer, I guess they're slightly different, but mostly the same. Um, I just kind of learned that that's a one way to do it, and thank you to Jeremy for articulating it that way, because if art and design are my contributions to the world, I hope that they are something that uplift people in a lot of ways, and then also something that kind of resonates with them. And maybe it's not the exact intention that I gave the art piece, but if art is so cool because people can have different interpretations of what your piece and what it means to them, like that hits different.
Absolutely. What about you, Jeremy?
You know, a friend of mine, when I first got involved with the Day of Pink, said, we have one job in queer trans two-spirit activism, and it's to lift each other up, right? It's really easy to tear one another down. Most queer and trans folks have been torn down their whole lives by all kinds of people, whether it's family or friends or people at school. And so we have a responsibility when we're doing this work to lift each other up. And I think, that's always stuck with me. So to actually hear Patrick talk about how the flag and how art and design lifts each other up is actually really fantastic. And I think yeah, it's so funny that we're saying the same thing. So yeah, I think especially now we're living in a tough space with challenging politically motivated uh issues that are really harming our community. And I think now more than ever, we need that joy, we need that magic, we need that glitter and that light to sort of spread around, to refill that energy box. So yeah.
Beauty. Absolutely, that beauty. Um, if there is one thing that you wanted our readers to take away from this interview, what would it be? We can start with you, Jeremy.
You know, if folks can just do one thing, I think it would be to share the story of the Two Spirit Pride flag, and then hopefully dare to explore the Data Pink's YouTube documentaries. We have some really cool documentaries on unknown stories in our community, like the Brunswick Four and the coining of the term dyke, the trans flag, and the Stonewall riots, like from the perspective of an activist from the riots, Martin Boyce, and of course Patrick's story. But I think what is exciting is that, as you uncover these stories and these histories and these experiences, sometimes you kind of look around your own town and your own bar and your own Pride festival, and you realize, oh my gosh, there are unsung heroes in our own space. The one thing I love about the Day of Pink is that we're constantly identifying people who have done really amazing stuff that have just been, and I hate to say it, but they've just been forgotten to time and space. And whether it's the next generation of queer and trans folk, or whether it's, even people our age, I think we don't know our own stories because we don't grow up with them. And so there's we have that much more of a responsibility to learn from them. Gilbert Baker, who created the pride flag, actually said to me before he passed, he's like, because like it was so funny because like when he was alive, nobody knew who he was, right? I take him out to pride festivals, we do talks, they'd be free, and it was hard to get people to show up, right? It was hard to get people to like come out and hear this story and hear this person. And then after he passed, everybody loved him and his name became household. And it was so funny because I remember one day at breakfast, he just did a talk in our nation's capital in Ottawa, and it wasn't attended in the way that we wanted it to. It wasn't, loved in the way I wanted it to. And I looked at him and he was like, Jeremy, when I'm dead, they're all gonna love me, but while I'm alive, they don't appreciate me. And I don't know. I mean, I think if readers could take the first step in learning more about the stories that we don't tell each other, and then maybe take the second step in appreciating folks around them, I think that'd be great because yeah, there's so much knowledge, there's so much activism, there's so much history and magic in our community right now. We don't need to, we need to sort of celebrate those things. So yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Patrick? One thing that you want people to take away.
I think I need to talk about the concept behind the design as well and what's kind of featured on it. And in my community, being Ojibwe, we really revere nature. We revere eagles. They kind of fly the highest. They carry our thoughts and prayers up to the Creator. So they have a really big, important job. And whenever you find an eagle feather or you're presented one by an elder, it really means that you're on the right path or you've done something of service to your community. So in the flag itself, I have two eagle feathers kind of in the middle because I feel like folks that identify on the 2S LGBTQ spectrum, they deserve eagle feathers for being who they are, being having the courage to kind of come out of their shells or communities and kind of enter other spaces where they're accepted. And it's not always an easy journey. So the feathers in the middle represent that, kind of like encapsulating that is like the sun who kind of provides us with everything that we need from, you know, energy for our plants that we consume, the animals that consume them as well. And then kind of around that is sort of like this one's not in color, but the other ones are, and it's the colors of the rainbow, which are the spectrum of light, and they kind of represent not only beating, but like the particles of light that never die. And that's sort of the what I went with for the design of this flag, and what I hope that folks kind of take away are those types of design elements.
Beautiful. How can people find you? Find out more about your work, Patrick, and find out more about Day of Pink organization, social media contacts, and what have you.
Nice and easy, just Patrick Hunter art. I think I'm like one of the first ones that comes up for that on Instagram, or just a Google search would reveal me.
I was gonna say Patrick Hunter art .ca or dayofpink.org. So just dayofpink.org and yeah. Um always, I think I can speak on behalf of both of us. We're always happy to help and answer questions. Um If you're looking for an excellent speaker, please do check out Patrick Hunter. And if you're looking for someone to run your paint night, Patrick Hunter. The Day of Pink also has a really fantastic speakers bureau, which also includes the Trans Flag creator, Monica Helms, and Stonewall activist Martin Boyce. So feel free to check those resources out. And yeah, feel free to check out our free workshops and presentations and other tools if you get a chance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. Are there any final thoughts, anything else you wanted to share before we end the interview?
Happy Pride, everyone.
Yeah,
Happy
happy Pride.
Pride. Hold on.